after the prelude, Nora and Lila Bailey will light our flaming chalice.
These are words from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Time is the most precious gift in our possession, for it is the most irrevocable. This is what makes it so disturbing to look back upon the time which we have lost. Time lost is time when we have not lived a full human life. Time unenriched by experience, creative endeavor, enjoyment, and suffering. Time lost is time not filled, time left empty. We begin with a good Lutheran hymn. A Mighty Fortress, number 200 in our hymnals. And we join in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to First Parish in Bedford on this crisp and beautiful spring day. I'm Deborah Weiner, Interim Director of Religious Education here at First Parish, and we are glad that you are here. We welcome you just as you are, whatever is going on well or not so well in your life right now. We are glad that you came in our doors today. It's a big weekend here in Bedford. Thanks to all of those who made that delicious pancake breakfast for us yesterday and celebrated our annual honoring of upstart patriots who took on the oppressive redcoats in this town at pole capping day. Here at First Parish, we celebrate the many diversities among us, and whether you call yourself patriot or upstart, No matter your age, race, class, varying abilities, sexual orientation or gender identity, religious or political beliefs, you are welcome here. Following the service, I hope that you will join us for a community hour in the common room. Stop by the welcome table on your way in if you would like to find out more about us and tell us more about you too. You can also fill out the blue connection card during the service that should be in your pew rack if you would like to stay in touch with goings on around here. And there are a lot of them. In the back of your order of service, I want to call your attention to the announcement and calendar section. I particularly want you to remember that registration for this congregation's annual Spring Ferry Beach Retreat is going on this week and next, and then it's done. So don't wait. Ferry Beach is a gorgeous place, and this is a welcome opportunity for people of all ages to relax and enjoy the weekend. So whether you've been going forever or you're just thinking about it for the first time, I hope that you will join the congregation at Ferry Beach. We've also got our monthly blood pressure clinic today after the service in Parish Minister Annie Gonzalez-Milliken's office. That's that way. And there will be a screening of Ron Cordes' Wilderness Journey today in room 202 starting at 12 noon. And that's only a little bit of what's going on. There is so much. Next Sunday, you won't want to miss our worship service on the legacy of theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which John will introduce to you today. That service next week will be a performance by actor Al Staggs. And there is a screening of Michael Moore's new film, Fahrenheit 11/9, among other things going on. And now, I am really glad to welcome Jennifer McLean to the pulpit for a stewardship moment that is dear to my heart. Jen.
She didn't even know what I was going to say. All right, good morning. I'm Jennifer McLean, and I'm here on behalf of the Religious Education Committee to encourage you to increase your pledge for next year. So take out your pledge cards, checkbooks, start adding some zeros. In this period of transition, we have been focusing on what it means to build a robust program for children and youth in our congregation and support it through appropriate funding and staffing. This year, our programs are serving 105 kids in Sunday morning classes and youth groups. We will provide 38 weeks of programming for children from preschool through high school on Sunday mornings, evenings, and Wednesday afternoons. Our children have learned about being together in community. They have painted murals, visited nearby houses of worship, sang, made puppets. They have discussed big issues and small ones. Week after week, they come together just as we, the larger congregation, come together. So I would like to ask each of you to take a moment and think about why you come here and why you need to be together. I need to be reminded of the person I want to be and to feel that I am not alone in aspiring to live in a just and compassionate world. I need to be reminded that others are working towards those same goals. We bring our children because we want them to learn how to be the people we hope they will become, compassionate members of our community and larger society. We want to give them the tools and role models to navigate the world. We on the RE Committee have summarized these tools into 4 key ideas: community, individual journey, service, and knowledge. One important example is our OWL program. Did you know that in addition to being lovely, charming people, each of our OWL facilitators is trained through a UUA workshop? The workshops and the curriculums both take time and money. We are interested in expanding our OWL program to include age-appropriate classes at younger grades. This will require more leaders who will need financial resources to train. We will need financial resources. So next year's proposed RE budget includes additional funds to support this. We also send our kids off on adventures. This coming Wednesday, 4 of our senior youth are traveling to New York for the Unitarian Universalist United Nations Office of Intergeneration, no, shoot. All right, I'm going to get it. Unitarian Universalist United Nations Office Intergenerational Spring Seminar. UUNO for short. Okay. They will spend several days in workshops with UUs from around the country discussing gender equity in action. The explorers, who are our 4th and 5th graders, have gone on field trips to local historical sites. And later this morning, I believe Olivia Evans will be speaking about Sanctuary Boston, which the coming of age participants visited recently. Guess what all the trips take? We have some money allocated for scholarships and to support our volunteer adults, but it's kind of embarrassing how much. So next year's proposed RE budget includes additional funds to support this. Beyond staff costs, our current budget works out to about $50 per child for the whole year. $50 for teacher training, field trips, supplies, snacks, curriculum, paper, crayons, silly props for Christmas Eve services, and Easter egg hunts. With our wonderful volunteers, we were able to do a lot with that money, but we want to do more. At this time, I'd like to ask anybody who is participating in RE, youth groups, or coming of age to please stand up. And participating, I mean any child or adult volunteer or anybody who touches the program this year. Please stand up. Please stay standing. Stay standing. Sorry, you got to get some blood flow. So anybody who participated ever, stand up. All right, so anybody who cares about someone who has ever participated in RE, youth group, or coming of age, please stand up. These children and youth are part of our congregation. These adults who spend time with them and love them are part of our congregation. Please consider pledging generously to support the programs we want and need for all of us. Thank you.
No, actually, I wasn't good enough. I didn't get this in the order of service. Last week, Stewardship Committee was handing out soup for people who picked up their pledge cards. This week, we're handing out soup if you just promise you're going to get your pledge card in on time.
Thank you, Jen and Doug. Before kids and teachers go off to their classes, I wanted them to have an opportunity to witness simple welcoming of new members to this congregation. We don't choreograph this thing much, and we sort of bumble through it, but nonetheless, it is extraordinarily important in the life of this congregation, and there's actually a connection to be made between the fundraising part that you've heard, and in my sermon, I'm going to be talking about Bonhoeffer and others' opposition to the Nazis and to authoritarianism. And the connection that is made is we are a voluntary association. People come here out of their own free will. And that is a bulwark of democracy. You might have noticed that we don't receive any federal funding. And we are not expecting any federal funding. And we don't want any federal funding. And those of you who have knowledge of churches in Europe may know that they are often beholden to the governments that fund them. And that is problematic. And likewise, I was looking at the words of our UU theologian, James Luther Adams, and he once said, "In a totalitarian society, the spaces of voluntary associations are eliminated. I've often told of the experience in Germany when a man, an anti-Nazi, warned me, in Germany today, 1927, you either keep your mouth shut or you get your head bashed in. In the democratic society, the non-participating citizens bash their own heads in. The living democratic society requires the disciplines of discussion and common action for the determination of policy. In the New Testament, it says, "By their fruits shall you know them," but to this word we should add the admonition, "By their groups you shall know them." And so we welcome new members today, and in the current class of new members, I will read their names, and members of our membership committee, as well as Dave Southard, representing our parish board, will come to greet you as well. You are given flowers, you are given a flaming chalice pin, and you know the admonition that goes with flaming chalice pins. It does not go in that bowl of junk in your kitchen on the counter with just effluvia of your life. You have to put that flaming chalice pin somewhere on an article of clothing so that you and somebody else may sometimes see it. Put it on your pajamas if you want. And I didn't even mention that new members and newcomers are welcome to visit our parsonage this afternoon, and that is a rare, believe you me, treat. So with all of that said, I am aware of these are new members, and as your name is called, please come forward and run the gauntlet up here. Peter Ash, I know, is ill this morning. Kelly and Zachary Crowley, Aaron Dorr, Pamela Herrick, Nathaniel and Elizabeth Markham. Tom Neal, I am aware, is not here this morning. Elise and Mark Randazzo, Joe and Rebecca Titlow. And all you need to do is stand and face everybody so that in a moment we can cheer uproariously, but not until everybody gets up here. And before we do that, Rebecca Green-Neal, our clerk, has these words to say.
Friends, you have joined a free church, a church with a proud heritage. No creed will bind your heart or mind. Live and speak as freely as you are able, with charity, integrity, and courage.
Rise as you are able. We welcome you into our liberal religious community. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Let us worship together in such affection that our differences strengthen one another. Give it up, everybody. Welcome, all of you, and as you're still standing, we'll join together in singing as kids and teachers go off to their classes. How could anyone? It is number 1053 in the teal hymnal.
Happy spring, everyone. My name is Bob Batt. I'm a member of the lay pastoral visitors here at First Parish. I'd like to invite those who have a joy and or concern they would like to share to come forward at this time. I will be here at the candle stand after the service for those who would like to light a private candle. And I'll light a final candle for those joys and concerns we keep in our hearts.
Olivia is going to be introducing our offering today, and being the first Sunday of the month, we share this with a group chosen by our Social Responsibility Council. And Olivia has had opportunity to be with the Sanctuary Boston group and to say a little bit more about Sanctuary Boston. Olivia, you're up.
So this year's coming of age group attended the Sanctuary Boston service in Harvard Square this past Wednesday. This is an amazing church community that holds its members in love and support. They meet every 2 weeks, alternating between Boston and Harvard Square. When we attended, there was singing and even dancing to songs about love, letting go, and letting the Spirit guide you. Everyone there was incredibly nice and open, and many were young adults. During the social time after service, many of the members spoke to us and answered our questions. I am very talkative, so I talked a lot, but they didn't seem to care. In fact, they actually welcomed people to talk to them. Although this was our first time, I could tell that it's a great place to be, even if you attended for only one service. Thank you for your generous contribution.
To preface my sermon about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I asked for volunteers to look at quotations from Bonhoeffer and to choose one or two brief ones and tell us why they spoke to them. And I have no idea what the next people are going to have to say, but I'm going to ask Stacy Chandler and Vito Lemura to come forward, please.
So I volunteered to read a Dietrich Bonhoeffer quotation this morning because I didn't know anything about him. I'm a sucker. This was the one that I kept returning to when I was perusing options. There is nothing that can replace the absence of someone dear to us, and one should not even attempt to do so. One must simply hold out and endure it. At first that sounds very hard, but at the same time it is also a great comfort. For to the extent the emptiness truly remains unfilled, one remains connected to the other person through it. It is wrong to say that God fills the emptiness. God in no way fills it, but much more leaves it precisely unfilled, and thus helps us preserve, even in pain, the authentic relationship. Furthermore, the more beautiful and full the remembrances, the more difficult the separation. But gratitude transforms the torment of memory into silent joy. One bears what was lovely in the past, not as a thorn, but as a precious gift deep within, a hidden treasure of which one can always be certain. When a friend of mine lost her husband of 15 years in a tragic bike accident, well-meaning people told her, "You're young, you'll move on." She was dumbstruck by this advice. When another friend lost her baby, well-meaning people told her that it was God's will and that she could just have another baby. This never helped her feel better. What would they want to forget? Why would they avoid the pain? When I was working as a medical social worker, I worked primarily with terminal cancer patients. Many of them were reluctant to talk about their death with their loved ones, so they talked to me. I was always relieved when they eventually found a way to open up to their spouses, parents, and children about their fears and hopes related to their imminent death. The candid conversation was a gift for both sides. Death cannot be avoided, so why should we avoid the pain that reminds us that we once had a person in our lives, a hidden treasure of which one can always be certain?
In my Holy Cross days, studying theology, we took a lot of time reading Bonhoeffer. So I really enjoyed getting back into it and going through some of his work. Bonhoeffer was implicated in the plot to kill and assassinate Adolf Hitler. He was part of the German resistance during World War II. He was imprisoned, and what I'm about to read are from the letters and papers from his prison. It was a bleak time. It's a bleak set of words that I'm about to read to you, but I think it has some resonance today. Bonhoeffer was hanged in 1945, just before the end of the war, really. He says, "Upon closer observation, it becomes apparent that every strong upsurge of power in the public sphere, be it of political or religious nature, infects a large part of humankind with stupidity. It would even seem that this is virtually a sociological, psychological law. The power of the one needs the stupidity of the other. The process at work here is not that particular human capacities, for instance, the intellect, suddenly atrophy or fail. Instead, it seems that under the overwhelming impact of rising power, humans are deprived of their inner independence and, more or less consciously, give up establishing an autonomous position towards the emerging circumstances. The fact that the stupid person is often stubborn must not blind us to the fact that he is not independent. In conversation with him, one virtually feels that one is dealing not at all with him as a person, but with slogans, catchwords, and the like that have taken possession of him. He is under a spell, blinded, misused, and abused in his very being. Having thus been a mindless tool, the stupid person will also be capable of any evil, and at the same time incapable of seeing that it is evil. This is where the danger of diabolical misuse lurks, for it is this that can once and for all destroy human beings.
Thank you, Stacy and Vito. In the United States Holocaust Museum, there is a sign, and it hangs on a wall in our common room, and it's on the back of your order of service, and it lists early warning signs of fascism. They are powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, identification of enemies as a unifying cause, supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and government intertwined, corporate power protected, labor power suppressed, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, and fraudulent elections. This list, created, by the way, pre-Trump, is based on research into the regimes of Hitler and Mussolini, Salazar in Portugal, Franco in Spain, Suharto in Indonesia, and Pinochet in Chile. And while the list is itself a bit controversial and does not take into account the ways things are decidedly different in the United States today, still you can't help but notice some ominous similarities. In this illiberal era of authoritarianism, greed, and kakistocracy, government by the least capable, there is resurgent interest in the history of resistance, be it the nonviolent resistance of Gandhi and King, and the resistance of those who defied the Nazis. For several years, I've been aware of a performer named Al Staggs who reenacts episodes from the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and we are fortunate that Al Staggs will be with us here next Sunday. He lives in New Mexico, and he is coming here in collaboration with First Parish and the Harvard Divinity School, where he will also be speaking next week. Here on Sunday, after the briefest of introductions, his performance will be the entirety of next Sunday's service. Please come and invite your friends. Bonhoeffer was born in 1906 and executed on April 9, 1945, just 2 weeks before Hitler's suicide and the end of the war. He was a German Lutheran pastor, theologian, spy, martyr, and Protestant saint whose life, death, and writings have inspired documentary films, biographies for adults and young adults, scholarly assessments, even a new graphic novel. And in anticipation of next Sunday, I have immersed myself in all things Bonhoeffer. What is most remarkable about Bonhoeffer is that though he would join a conspiracy that tried 3 times to assassinate Hitler, his primary motivation was not political, but faithfully and obediently theological. And so I've tried to absorb some of Bonhoeffer's theology, but I tell you, these German Lutheran theologians caused me to think it miraculous that I was allowed to graduate from the Harvard Divinity School. But then Bonhoeffer was decidedly unimpressed by American theological education. To whet your appetite for next Sunday and give you some context, this morning I will give you a thumbnail sketch of Bonhoeffer. Dietrich, and many biographers refer to him by his first name, was one of 8 Bonhoeffer children. His parents valued education, music, culture, athleticism, and rationality. His father was a preeminent Berlin psychiatrist. Like most everyone, they were Lutheran, but not churchgoers. Fascinated by eternal questions, Bonhoeffer determined as a teenager that he would be a theologian, and he even signed his name at age 15, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, theologian. His father was unimpressed and suspected his son would waste his life secluded and unengaged with the excitement of the 20th century. Bonhoeffer regarded most aspects of church life as boring, rote, and unreal. He imagined a theology that was enlivening, relevant, and real. When he was 18, he and his brother traveled to Italy, where at the Vatican, he observed passionate Christians of diverse nationalities worshiping together. This was quite unlike the German church. He began to glimpse a universal Christian church united in community. A key to understanding Bonhoeffer is that ideas and beliefs were nothing if they did not relate to the world of reality outside one's own mind. In 1930, at age 23, he traveled to the United States, where he studied at Union Seminary in New York. That is where Annie graduated from. Liberal American theology, however, seemed flabby to Bonhoeffer, but he made great friends. Frank Fisher was an African-American student who introduced him to Abyssinian Baptist in Harlem, which captivated Bonhoeffer and showed a vital faith that seemed absent in other churches. Bonhoeffer even taught Sunday school there. And Bonhoeffer loved gospel music, and he bought records which he then took home to Germany. Traveling with Frank Fisher, Bonhoeffer was also introduced to the perversity of American racism. Another friend made at Union was Jean Lasserre, a French student. One of Bonhoeffer's brothers was killed in the First World War just 2 weeks after his deployment. The rise of Nazism must be seen in the light of Make Germany Great Again after the humiliation of Versailles. Thus, it was quite unusual for a German and a Frenchman to become good friends. One day with Lasserre, together they saw the film version of the anti-war novel All Quiet on the Western Front, and in its depiction of war's horror, together they wept. Bonhoeffer began to develop a theology that was both active and demanding. The Bible was not about history or about abstract beliefs, but he thought it speaks in the present tense to you in your life circumstance now. The Sermon on the Mount is the essence of Christianity, and what is expected of us regarding prayer, justice, care of the needy, that we should live in a noticeably different way than other people, because the followers of Jesus should hold to a much higher standard of conduct, a standard of love and selflessness that Jesus himself would embody when he died on the cross. Bonhoeffer distinguished between cheap grace and costly grace. Cheap grace is lip service, going to church and feeling pretty good about yourself. Costly grace is what the gospel demands. It is the treasure hidden in the field. For the sake of it, a man will gladly go and sell all he has. It is the pearl of great price. Cheap grace is Easter without Good Friday. Superficial. Costly grace is necessarily sacrificial. As for the selflessness of Jesus, Bonhoeffer's theology called for the church to exist for others and for us to live for others. He preached of the worth of the worthless and the worthlessness of that which the world considers worthy. This would mean an affinity for otherness and marginalized people, for foreigners, African Americans, the poor, the oppressed, and most especially in his circumstances, Jews. Bonhoeffer imagined a religionless Christianity. He planned but never succeeded in visiting Gandhi in India. Bonhoeffer was a conundrum. He was too pious for the liberals, and he was too worldly for the evangelicals. Bonhoeffer also developed a theology from below, that we are informed not only from above by intellect and insight, but also from the underside by exposing ourselves to darkness, disappointment, and failure. Bonhoeffer's sermons were weighty and they were heavy. I am told that Al Staggs has also discovered some evidence of Bonhoeffer's sense of humor, so we have that to look forward to as well. Bonhoeffer's was a kind of precursor to what we now call liberation theology. Perhaps you remember me quoting Sister Simone Campbell, one of the nuns on the bus, who advised people of faith to walk towards trouble, that we live lives of love when we allow our hearts to be broken by listening to the stories of those who live lives other than our own. After returning to Germany from America, Bonhoeffer taught confirmation in a working-class neighborhood in Berlin, and he developed other international and ecumenical relationships, serving German churches in London and in Barcelona. 2 days after Hitler became Reich Chancellor in 1933, Bonhoeffer delivered a radio address which explored the meaning of the Führer, the title meaning, of course, leader, but with many other German associations. Bonhoeffer distinguished between leaders whose authority derives from subservience to God's will and those who are self-serving misleaders. For reasons unknown but suspicious, Bonhoeffer's radio address was cut off before he could finish. Anti-Semitism, a malignant feature of European culture for centuries and worsened by Martin Luther, metastasized. Hitler called for the boycott of Jewish businesses. Bonhoeffer's 91-year-old grandmother famously pushed aside one of Hitler's SA brown shirts so that she might shop where she had always shopped. "No one will tell me where to shop," she declared. Aryan paragraphs which denied deeds and club memberships and many things to Jews, as well as to Poles, Serbs, Russians, and Slavs, and which had existed since the 19th century in Europe and, frankly, in America too, tightened so as to remove all non-Aryans from many professions in Germany and all participation in public life. The final solution loomed. Dietrich's twin sister, Sabine, had married a Jew who later was baptized a Christian, but as the noose tightened, it was arranged for them to escape to England. The advance of Nazism also led to the co-opting of the German church. In the theology of Martin Luther, there was the assumption that both church and state were ordained by God, and thus, the German church mostly went along with the Third Reich and indeed created a Reich church. installed its sympathizers as bishops, banned all members of Jewish descent, eliminated the Old Testament, scourged the Jews, made Jesus into a more manly Aryan man, and put Mein Kampf on church chancels and swastikas on their steeples, and required loyalty oaths of all clergy. As there were many intellectuals and gentry and even military officials who were appalled by Hitler, so too there were Christian resistors, but not nearly enough. James Luther Adams used to remind me that in Nazi Germany there was but one publication with a Unitarian name, and it was a Nazi publication. With other dissenters like Karl Barth and Martin Niemöller, remember Niemöller was the one who wrote the famous "I did not speak up when they came for others." Bonhoeffer established what was called the confessing church. They confessed their obedience to the gospel, which in 1934 issued the Barmen Declaration that attempted to distance the church from the state. Some members rescued Jews, but rather ineffectively, and soon the confessing church itself was declared illegal and many of its leaders were sent to concentration camps. Bonhoeffer, meanwhile, created a confessing seminary in Pomerania in northern Germany, where ordinands developed spiritual disciplines, lived and ate together, practiced Christian community, including singing and listening to the gospel records Bonhoeffer had brought back from America. Soon, that seminary, too, was declared illegal and went underground. Bonhoeffer declared that there are three ways for the church to relate to the state. First, by questioning the legitimacy of state action and holding the state accountable. Second, by helping those who are harmed by the injustices of the state. And third, the church may stick a spoke in the wheel and put an end to injustice. If I sit next to a madman as he drives a car into a group of innocent bystanders, I can't, as a Christian, simply wait for the catastrophe, then comfort the wounded and bury the dead. I must try to wrestle the steering wheel out of the hands of the driver. In 1939, with much support from others who wished to save him from the situation in Europe, Bonhoeffer returned to the United States. But almost immediately, he felt uncomfortable, homesick, and convinced that if he wanted to be part of a post-Nazi German future, he needed to be with his people back in Germany. Against all reason, when most others were fleeing Germany, Bonhoeffer returned to Germany on the last ship to sail from America to Europe. Inexorably, Bonhoeffer moved from confession to conspiracy. Confession without action was complicity with evil and cheap grace. God demanded more. It was time to drive a spoke in the wheel to grab the wheel from the madman. Dietrich's family was well connected. Hans Donaghy, his brother-in-law, married to his sister Christel, worked in the German Justice Department, but was nonetheless part of the resistance. He got Dietrich a job in the Abwehr, the German intelligence agency, which ironically also became a center of resistance. This saved Dietrich from conscription, and he became a double agent, allegedly using his international connections to get information for the Nazis, but in reality allowing him to stay in touch with others in the resistance. Many of Dietrich's friends thought he had sold out to the Nazis, when in fact he was with the resistance. Having inside knowledge, Bonhoeffer was the first person to alert Westerners to the horror of the Holocaust. It was determined that Hitler must be killed. For Dietrich, this was entirely theological. It was what God called him to do, and there were at least 3 attempts. Disguised as a gift of brandy, a bomb was placed on Hitler's plane. It failed to go off. Then, on a suicide mission, one of the conspirators placed a bomb in his own coat and, in a meeting with Hitler, activated its timer. Hitler unexpectedly left the room. The bomber hurriedly found a restroom and disarmed the bomb. The third attempt, in July 1944, placed a bomb in a briefcase in Hitler's Wolf's Lair conference room in Prussia. The bomb was but 6 feet from Hitler, but had been moved against a heavy wooden table leg that deflected its blast. 4 people were killed, but Hitler, singed and his pants shredded, survived. Hitler declared immortal. Dietrich was arrested in 1943 and spent the remainder of his life in prison, transferred from Tegel in Berlin to Buchenwald to Regensburg to Schönberg to Flossenburg. He ministered to other prisoners, and to his jailers he wrote prolifically. On April 9th, 1945, not 3 weeks before Hitler committed suicide and Germany surrendered, Bonhoeffer was court-martialed, stripped naked, and he was at dawn hung. The prison chaplain said he had never seen anyone more composed than Dietrich as he prayed before his execution. The very same day, his brother-in-law, Donani, was hung by piano wire. His brother, Klaus, was murdered by the Gestapo 2 weeks later. To another prisoner, after his court-martial, Dietrich said, "This is the end, but for me, the beginning." Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who began his life with an insatiable curiosity about eternity, now belongs to the ages. His life and his death challenge us to respond. To what sacrifice are we called now? To what sacrifice are we called now? Our closing hymn is one with a very theological text by Bonhoeffer. We'll sing "By Gracious Powers." It's on the inserted page. Time is the most precious gift in our possession, for it is the most irrevocable. This is what makes it so disturbing to look back upon the time which we have lost. Time lost is time when we have not lived a full human life, time unenriched by experience, creative endeavor, enjoyment, and suffering. Time lost is time not filled, time left empty.